You're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
And today we're going to talk about what went right and what went wrong with our spring and summer garden.
We had actually planned to do this outside today, but the wind chill's about 24 degrees right now, and no.
And the big thing is the wind is just way too strong to be able to hear anything over any of our audio recordings.
Right.
So we're back inside. As you're going to see this happen a little more frequently because we get a lot of wind.
Right. And actually winter is a windy time of year here anyway, but there's some storms coming through. We're catching just the bottom edge, whereas the people east of us here are going to get smacked. So what we wanted to talk to you about today, and we're going to do this in two chunks. We're going to do spring and summer this time, and the next video we'll do fall and winter. Because it has been a very long and complicated year, and we figured you didn't want to sit here for an hour.
Been very educational,
Yes.
but it's definitely been long.
Yes. I would describe spring as coming late, and then going straight from the 30s and 40s straight to the 80s and 90s. We had decided this year we were going to do some things we'd done in the past. When we lived in Massachusetts, we used to plant peas very early in the season, like February or March, whenever the snow came off the ground, and we would get the garden. The garden was pretty much ready to go anyway. We would get the peas in, plant them in, it would snow again, and when the snow came off, the peas would literally just sort of vault from the ground. They were ready to go. So we said, well, heck, we could do that here too. So we planted two types of regular English peas. We had some peas from Johnny's, and then we had some peas that were gifted to us by S.A.N. Gardner. Then we also did snow peas and broad beans.
That was a story.
That was the story. The peas were really interesting because here we had two different kinds of peas growing in the same bed, in the same soil, with exactly the same watering and everything else, and they were really different. So it was very interesting to compare the different peas and how they responded and stuff like that. We still haven't decided exactly which variety we're going to grow this coming year, but we're definitely growing peas again. It was very good. Now the snow peas, absolutely awesome.
They were incredible. They tasted great. They were prolific. They went great in our Asian food.
Now the last batch that we actually used, we discovered there were some issues with, but there again, we figured out what went wrong. And we'll just be a little bit more careful the next time around in terms of mixing the age of the peas. We had some in there that were a little too old, I think.
Yeah, some were a little tough and a little stringy. Most of them were just perfect.
Yeah.
They were sweet, they were delicious, they were tender. But there was the odd pea that just was...
a little bitter.
And a little tough. What did you think about the broad beans?
Oh, God. I think that summarizes it all. Oh, God, yeah. So we've been wanting to try broad beans because we've never had broad beans. We've never grown them. And we haven't even been able to find any locally because we really prefer to taste a vegetable before we grow it randomly. We were seeing a lot of our buddies across the pond in England growing broad beans. And we're like, okay, they seem to be pretty cold tolerant. Even if they get nipped a little bit by cold, they usually come back unless they're frozen solid. They're pretty productive. Let's try it.
So they matched up pretty well with our usual growing conditions.
Right. And yeah, because we have trouble a lot of times in the spring. What can we plant out there? The ground is still too cold for green beans and things like that. So we planted them. Not a great success. We did get a small crop. We had aphid problems, which I find is actually a big problem in Great Britain too. We did not have any fungus problems because we're dry enough with that not to have that.
We're way dry.
Well, we do occasionally get fungus, and the fungus here can actually be incredibly more invasive than you would think it was.
It's vicious stuff.
Because it has to be able to grow, reproduce, and die in super short time frames. So it can actually be way more aggressive than in, say, a wetter climate like Missouri or Mississippi or something. But we grew the broad beans and really got very little out of them. Mice loved them. They were very attracted to them, even worse than the peas. And so I spent a lot of time with mice and rat traps, which is okay. I can deal with that. I do that every spring. We're producing this lovely little smorgasbord of tasty young things, and everything else out there is pretty crappy, so they're going for us.
Yeah, so it's come to the Brainstorms buffet.
Yeah, really. We're having a rodent buffet this week. Come on.
Ugh.
Yeah, really. What are we going to do about it this coming year? Well, two different things. We're going to try a different variety because we spoke fairly extensively with some of our friends. We're going to try what is considered to be a traditional British variety on this side of the ocean. And we're going to do something that we saw a lot of people do, which was start them indoors somewhere and transplant them out. They are still tolerant of cool soil, but this means that we could get it out early enough that if we still had a spring that went straight from cold to hot, we still might be able to get beans off before the weather got super hot, because it got ridiculous. I mean, 80s and 90s suddenly.
Yeah, so one of the things we think happened with these broad beans is we think that it got too hot too fast.
And I mean, that's our best guess. We did everything else we could think of growing. The plants themselves looked healthy, despite being chewed on occasionally. They did produce flowers. The flowers are lovely. We did have some pollinator problems this spring, so that could have made it worse.
Yeah, we had a real lack of bees this year.
Yeah, we didn't see a single honeybee until July.
Not only that, other pollinators were kind of few and far between.
Yeah, usually we have a lot of small wasps and other kind of non-honey producing bees and stuff like that. Nothing early. So it could have been that too, but still we did get pods. We just didn't get pods that we liked the flavor of. So we're going to try a different variety, and it gets one more shot. And if this doesn't work this year, we'll do something different next time.
Yeah, our friends in England described the taste being different than what we had. So we're not sure whether it's the variety or whether it's the weather or something else.
Right.
But we're going to give it another shot.
Right. Summertime.
Oh.
How would you describe the summer?
Hot, dry, no rain. We had monsoon. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't happen this year.
It didn't happen.
Well, we'll have 3 or 4 inches of rain in any case in July. A lot of times we'll start raining here around mid-July. And so by the beginning of August, we'll usually have had 2 or 3 inches.
Yeah.
Not this year.
We grew tons of peppers and tons of tomatoes.
That's another story. We'll do another video about what we learned about tomatoes and peppers on our homestead.
Right.
And it's different for us than probably most everybody else, but it was still interesting and educational. So one of the things we did do this year is we did grow potatoes successfully for the first time in years.
Right. We used big, large pots, like, I don't know, those are 15-gallon pots, I think.
The 15-gallon pots, and that was new for us. We haven't grown in pots in years and years because we haven't needed to.
And we have enough small beds that we can usually squish in the things that really matter to us. And this year, early in the summer, we grew potatoes, and late in the summer, we grew sweet potatoes. They were both an interesting and learning experience. We got both potatoes and sweet potatoes. Not huge quantities of either, but it was our first try at it. And again, we had all kinds of complicated with irrigation and stuff like that, and lack of rain. What we did learn was that we had created the perfect environment for June bug larvae. And when we actually have a video, Henry will post a link to it here somewhere, where we harvested, I think it was like 4.5 pounds of potatoes and 8 ounces of grubs. We're still finding the grubs, by the way. So this is a problem we're working on. The other thing that we did different this summer that we'd never done was we did straw bale gardening for the first time. And it was very interesting. We were very concerned about whether it would work here because have such a dry environment, and it's windy. So it naturally wicks the water away. It naturally just totally evaporates everything.
Yeah, so our friend CB at CB's Greenhouse and Garden convinced me to go ahead and put some of the straw bales that we had for insulation, and what we intended to do is try to compost them. Since we don't have sides on the bales, the wind will dry out that outside edge of the straw bale, and so we end up with a hard husk on the outside of the bales.
Wait, it acts like a giant flower pot, basically.
And then the center of it is all composted.
Yeah, the center composted beautifully. In fact, when I pulled out one of the dead plants the other day, it was kind of amazing how good the quality of the soil that had created inside the straw bale was. So far, they're sturdy enough that I don't think we're going to try and move them. I think we're just going to use them in place, assuming they don't fall apart between now and the spring. We'll just use them in place again this summertime.
So there's a lot more to the straw bale story here, and we'll cover that in yet another video.
Right. Yeah, because that's kind of a thing unto itself. This summer was definitely different. As Henry mentioned, we did do potatoes, and we harvested potatoes and grubs.
Now, you know, the interesting thing about harvesting those potatoes is we harvested them early because we were going to be going out of town for close to 2 months.
Right.
And so we said, well, let's just go ahead and harvest them and see what we get, if we got anything.
Right. And if we hadn't harvested them,
we'd have had nothing.
We'd have had nothing, and we probably wouldn't have understood what happened.
But we started off with potting soil and other virgin ingredients going into these pots. So we knew that there was no critters living in the soil. So we decided to go ahead and pull the potatoes early, way early.
Right.
And we actually got a nice collection of potatoes, considering how short we let them stay in the pots. The major thing that we learned there was
grubs.
June bugs.
June bug grubs. We had more leafhoppers. We had more aphids. We had more everything. I mean, it was like the plague of critters this year.
We had more rats to start with, but Trapper Irene over here took care of them in short order.
Right. We had a small plague of squirrels too. That also went away. It was mostly the bugs were just terrible this summer. We also did a batch late of sweet potatoes. If your sweet potatoes get frosted, because we had an early weird frost.
No, it wasn't early weird frost. We went from, I think it was 85 or maybe as high as 90 degrees one day, and literally the next day, overnight, we had a 14-degree drop.
And that's rolling kind of into the fall, which is another video. But we had read that if your leaves are frosted, you need to harvest your sweet potatoes right away. So we did, and we got a small crop. It was obvious that if we'd been able to leave them for another 30 days or something like that, we would have been able to get a lot more sweet potatoes out of the deal. We were still pleased with it, and we'll do things a little differently. We'll plant probably only one per pot. We're going to definitely try that again. It was very nice not to have to worry about any of our little disasters this year in terms of E. coli, listeria. Let's see, I also heard hepatitis A, salmonella, probably a few other things.
None of that stuff.
None of that stuff.
If we have it, it's because we gave it to ourselves.
Yeah, really, exactly. We'll be back with more information about what we are going to do about tomatoes and peppers this year. And we still have a fall and winter roundup. Winter's obviously not over yet, but we have once again learned more, and we have plans for the future in terms of our greenhouse and how we're going to try and manage it in the future. We've had hoped to get more things done before the fall as usual, but it was one of those years where not everything went right. Hope that was informative, or at least entertaining. And I'll make sure that Henry links that potato and grub video, and I think we have one about the sweet potatoes too.
We do.
Yeah. And we may have done some on peas and snow beans and broad beans and everything else before too.
We did.
But that's sort of the summary of the first half of the year for us here. We feel like we learned a lot. We know we still have some issues.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and hit that bell for notifications.
Bye. And look short.
Oh, look short. That's